On May 30th, 1972, 3 carriages on the Big Dipper roller coaster at Battersea Fun Fair in London, carrying mostly children and teenagers, began hurtling backwards down the track unexpectedly. They soon derailed and crashed into the hoarding below, resulting in the deaths of 5 passengers and injuries to 13 others. To this day, it remains the deadliest roller coaster disaster ever recorded. The Big Dipper was part of the Battersea Fun Fair, located on London's South Bank. It was originally installed for the 1951 Festival of Britain, a nationwide event aimed at uplifting national spirits. Due to its popularity, the Fun Fair continued to operate. Despite its old-fashioned name, the Battersea Fun Fair was far from outdated. It is often cited as one of the earliest examples of a modern theme park. Predating Disney by 4 years, Battersea Fun Fair featured novel design elements for its time, including exotic architectural facades and fantastical themes, giving visitors a sense of stepping into another world. Visitors could step back in time to a fantastical medieval England and ride through Dragon Mountain. They could attend the races at Monte Carlo, go on a cruise around the world, marvel at a Mississippi-style showboat, from which old-fashioned Kentucky-style music was played, or perhaps even ride a rocket ship heading straight to the moon. The fair offered endless escapism, with the Big Dipper, the park's largest and most popular ride, standing out with its side friction design and 15-meter height. It attracted long queues and was a must-do for thrill seekers. By 1972, however, the Big Dipper was nearly 50 years old. Although still popular, it had undergone numerous repairs and redesigns, compounded by alleged mismanagement and lax safety regulations. This once enchanting ride had become a disaster waiting to happen. On that warm spring afternoon, May 30th, 1972, schools in the UK were on half-term break. Battersea Fun Fair was particularly crowded, with longer queues for the Big Dipper, as groups of children and teenagers eagerly waited their turn. At around 2:30 p.m., 30 people, mostly children, boarded the 3-car train. As was common for some older roller coasters, at the time a brakeman would also be riding in one of the cars, because the ride's design required someone to manually slow it down before it bends as the ride come to an end. The ride began normally, the train being winched up the hill by a haulage rope, making a creaking noise. Spectators watched eagerly for the drop. However, just before reaching the first peak, the haulage rope broke unexpectedly, and the train started rolling backwards. The brakeman's attempts to stop it failed. Observers reported that at first, the crowd laughed, thinking it was a prank or a harmless ride malfunction. Even the passengers momentarily thought it was a staged scare. Unfortunately, as the train picked up speed, laughter turned to screams. The first car derailed around a corner, jumping the rails and falling 15 feet. The remaining cars crashed into a stationary train and caused wooden hoardings to collapse. Passengers were thrown from the ride, some hanging upside down or lying on the ground. The front carriage, relatively undamaged, remained 15 meters above the ground. A 15-year-old girl, initially dazed and shocked, tried to help a friend covered in debris. As she moved, the structure gave way beneath her, and she fell to her death. Several other children in the back cars were crushed. Chaos ensued as bystanders rushed to help the trapped and injured. Meanwhile, the fun fair seemed to return to normalcy, with visitors still queuing for rides and music playing, even as rescuers worked to free those trapped. Tragically, 5 children died, 3 at the scene and 2 later in the hospital, while 13 others were injured. The immediate question was how such a disaster could occur at a beloved amusement park, and who was to blame. In the days following, answers were elusive. The Big Dipper's owners conducted their own investigations, while a public inquiry dominated news headlines. By the end of 1972, the investigation was handed to the Director of Public Prosecutions, leading to a trial in February 1973. Frank Etches, the engineer responsible for inspections, and ride manager James Hogan were charged with manslaughter. The trial's findings were shocking. Inspectors found 66 defects in the ride, including 18 in the support structure. The ride was deemed a death trap. Key issues included: 1. Haulage rope. The rope that snapped was in poor condition and only partially engaged in the gripping device. 2. Safety devices. The arresters, dogs, designed to prevent backward movement, were mostly missing or defective. Only one working arrestor was present, which broke under the train's weight. 3. Structural condition. The structure was in deplorable condition, with significant rot and algae growth. 4. Track misalignment. Misalignment of the track led to the derailment. Indirect factors included a previous fire in 1970 and the use of outdated replacement parts. It was also revealed that employees, many of whom were teenage boys, lacked proper training and were known to drink and use drugs while working. A similar incident had occurred the previous year, resulting in a passenger's arm fracture. The ride's poor condition, despite regular inspections, was due to inadequate fairground regulations at the time. The voluntary code of practice was full of loopholes, and inspections were poorly regulated. In November 1973, both the structural engineer and the ride manager were acquitted. The structural engineer's certification only applied to stationary conditions, not the ride's mechanical aspects. The ride manager was found not guilty due to insufficient knowledge required for safety oversight. The Big Dipper was dismantled, with some parts used for a smaller ride. The park remained open, but eventually closed in 1974 due to declining popularity. The Battersea Funfair disaster led to future legal changes, but reforms were slow. It took nearly 2 years for fairgrounds to be brought under health and safety regulation. Despite being the worst roller coaster disaster on record, little remains to indicate the fairground's existence. As of May 2022, a tree was planted to mark the disaster's 50th anniversary, with plans for a permanent memorial underway. Although some refer to it as Britain's forgotten disaster, for the families of the 5 children who died and the traumatized survivors, the Battersea Funfair disaster remains a vivid and painful memory. Thanks for watching.